Okay. Okay. You might have to put it closer to you like that. Hey, we are now live. So we're at 12:46 and we're going to call the finance committee meeting to order. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are privileged to meet on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Squamish and Indian nations. With that, there is an agenda recommendation.
That the agenda of this meeting be approved.
Thank you, Melissa. Second for that. Thank you, Cynthia. Are there any objections? Seeing and hearing none, and that's carried. Next up, we have a minute recommendation.
That the minutes of the finance committee meeting held on May 12th, 2025 be adopted.
Thank you, Melissa. A second for that. Thank you, April. Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, and that's carried. Are there any trustee items for the finance committee meeting? Okay. Seeing none, then we can go on to our presentations. So first up, we have the 2025-2026 Indigenous budgets. And we have Joyce and Colleen. Is Joyce coming or she's supposed to be here?
I haven't seen her. I actually thought she was falling downstairs.
Okay, do you want to just get started without her or do you want us to move on and come back when she joins us?
I'm not sure. Let me just check with Sarah.
Joyce did mention that she wasn't going to be attending in person, but she was going to be joining us online.
She's not in the waiting room or anything?
Maybe kick myself off.
For the financial statement audit plan, we need Grant to join us for that.
Yeah, that's the auditors.
Yeah, so we have to wait.
Do we want to go to the 3-year financial plan?
We have the auditors coming at a certain time, so I don't think
What time are the auditors coming?
1:50.
So 30 minutes away.
I can go, I can start anyways. Sarah's just texting Joyce to see if she's
Joining
online. Online.
Okay, if you want to start, then that's fantastic.
Okay. Are sure everybody Sure. Even small.
We can get a bit bigger.
So this is the North Targeted Funds budget as presented and accepted. Sort of as they are at this time to the Indigenous Education Council on May 15th. Secretary Treasurer Haverstock came to the Indigenous Education Council to present the final budgets that were put together in consultation with the nations. So as noted, this is the one for our north portion of our school district, which would include all of our schools from the Whistler community, Pemberton, and Darcy communities. So that includes our schools in Whistler. We have 3 there, and our schools in Pemberton, which we have 2, and then we also have a school in Blackwater Creek. So of our self-identified Indigenous students, we have a slight decrease in numbers, just a very slight amount. And which leaves us with a budget of $461,620. We did have some reductions in the budget. We reduced our language and culture programs just because it just never got spent fully in 2024, 2025. So we thought we would start there and try to have a few more folks come in and provide some services. We did something different this year, so it was presented differently for the staff to have easier access to the dollars to be able to bring in knowledge carriers into the schools. And sometimes when they had plans, the folks weren't available, so some of those fell through. So they thought it would be better if we reduce that program just a little bit. We also had some dollars set aside for our Indigenous Success Advisor program, mostly around food. I believe it was for food in the past and some incidentals. And since we do have our food program now, Feeding Futures, it just didn't get used at all. So it was felt that was another area that we could be saving some dollars on. Similarly to the Elders program, they struggled. We're very optimistic that we would have a large onslaught of elders coming in, and you know, it was a challenge to have folks come in on a regular basis due to travel, schedule, health, and all sorts of different things. So they felt that it was a good idea to reduce that budget by a bit. We maintained the same about mileage and phone, as well as the professional development that has increased over the past couple of years, mostly due to the increase in costs of going to conferences such as the Finesse conference. The costs for that had gone up quite a bit. And this year there was the extra surprise of the slide in Lions Bay, so they had to stay an extra night. So we tried making sure we made it the same. The administration fee that Leewat Nation charges the school district to administer our targeted funds and pay the staff remained the same, along with the celebration budget for the school. So we did have a carry forward, which was from previous years due to staff positions not being filled. And we are trying to continue to utilize those dollars because targeted dollars are supposed to be spent in one fiscal year. So we were doing our best to increase the number of staff, increase the services to students throughout the northern portion of our school district to see better success for our students. So the South budget, where we lost a few students in the north, we actually gained a few students in the south. One thing that I did forget to mention when I was doing the north is that overall, the Ministry of Education increased the supplemental funding per head count of self-identified Indigenous students by $20. And that does not cover off the increase in the increases we've seen in cost of living and wages. Obviously, that's over 2%, and $20 is not per student is not really
It's
covering that.
1.1%. As everyone, like you saw, the increase in wages was 2%, so it's not covering their costs.
Yeah, not at all. So, so the South is interesting. So they, as mentioned, that the 2% increase to their wages. This was an estimate. We were still working with Squamish Nation to find out their final wages, but at the time we happened to build the budget. We built the budget based on an estimate, so that's why we accepted it as presented, and to know that there might be some amendments coming in the during our amended budget cycle. And yeah, so that information had not been shared at the time that we built the budget. And that we're having some difficulty attaining invoices from Squamish Nation. Not because of a lack of trying on their behalf, it's just an internal situation that's happening there. So we have a significant amount of dollars that are sitting in targeted funds waiting to be paid out to their staff. Their staff are still being paid. So that's the upside. All the staff are being paid. But it's due to there's a number of staffing changes in their finance department, and somehow the Squamish Valley Education Department was left out of the loop somewhere along the line. And so they are trying to rectify that and are still working on that. And I think even this week we were offering to provide some extra help if they should need that. So we're hoping that we get that some invoices in the near future. We just did an overall increase to the staff, trying to predict the increase in wages that we were told are coming, but we didn't know the exact amount. So we did an increase of 2.5% for the staffing to try to capture that. We did some changes to the language and cultural expenses from 10,000 to 17,000. There has been a number of, obviously it's a bigger portion of our school district is in the south, and more and more of our teachers and schools are actually leaning into language and culture. And they have 2 full-time workers, which that go to all the schools. They have a cycle of about 6 weeks per school, and they go in and they do language and culture with all of the classes. And so that new structure also comes with a few extra costs. Also, we removed from the south the success advisor top up. We had topped up 2 of our success advisor positions that are paid for by the school district by a slight amount, because we have that extra need. We're doing something a little different, and that was out of targeted funds. And what we did is that we do have extra staff. Obviously, they have different staff from Squamish Nation supporting students as well. But because we don't know what the budget's going to look like, they felt that that's something they had to remove just in case we needed to balance the budget. They wanted to make sure that was there. And our Indigenous event expenses have gone up a little bit as costs have gone up. And that their professional development fund also increased because they do have a few more staff that they have on staff. And again, because they never increased it last year for the same thing. And everything else pretty much stayed the same. But again, this one, we're expecting that there may be some amendments to this budget just when we get those invoices and the normal budget, sort of at the final wages of the staff. So this was the first budget cycle that went through our Indigenous Education Council, and it was a really good dialogue. And I want to thank Danielle on behalf of the council for being there and being able to answer all of their questions and help with the budget development, and working really closely with the nations on that. So it was a really, other than some of the unknowns, it was a very smooth process.
What do we contribute for the cultural journeys? I see there's $15,000. So what is that for?
Cultural Journeys is a budget they've set aside particularly for staff in school. So that would be for all of the cultural events that they run for the fiscal.
Okay.
It's above and beyond what we obviously provide as part of our.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of curious about as to why.
So they had like a celebration last night. They had. It was great. I didn't get to eat fish, but there was there was a big barbecue and a family gathering celebrating the student success, and that would be part of one of the events that they would do as one of the ceremonies they would. And then any of their land-based learning. That's also supplementary through cultural journeys. Don't recharging.
Okay, thanks. Did you have your hand up, Celeste? I thought I saw it for a second.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm certain that we've talked about this before, but I am going to ask the question again. The difference in the wages from between the North and the South, if I recall, that is the nations decide what the hourly wage is for each of these workers, but these people are doing similar, if not identical work.
Correct. So you will notice that there is a big difference from last year. One of the reasons is the way they provide, the way we want to provide a living wage for their staff, and the way they provide, I guess, their salary bands. So what we did in the North is that's where you see the biggest change. What we did in the North is their mandate was to provide equal pay. And what they noticed was that because of the way that they're doing their pay, so what they do is they prorate it similar, so everyone gets paid 12 months of the year. They were finding that it was a little bit low, so they had to rethink how that looked. As well, it was a question of how come they're working 7 hours like the South? And so we made some changes to not only the hourly wage, but also to the length of their day and to capture programs like leadership and homework club, and the fact that students are there till 5 o'clock for the late bus in the North. We don't have a late bus in the South, but in the North they have a late bus, trying to capture that for the staff, make sure they have enough time to do all the paperwork, obviously students adjustments to that, and it has been very well received, and staff are extremely happy with the changes.
Oh, looks like Joyce is here. Is she? The second part to the question. Actually, I'm just gonna add to that if you don't mind. I think Joyce is here as well, but for Squamish Nation, because Squamish Nation just isn't just here, they're also as well. So if they have support workers, they would get paid the same. Squamish Nation. So that the pay range is established by their HR department. Yeah. Well, that's a lot of questions.
I think for me, it was a curiosity as well, so I asked it because if I were, because this becomes public, if I were, or this is public, an Indigenous support worker in Squamish, I'd be like, well, why are they making $40 an hour and I'm making 28? So that's how I would look at it.
They make 80% of the 42.
So in
Because of benefits.
no, so basically in Squamish, they get paid 12 months out of the year. So we're only charged for the 80% of the year. In the North, they don't get paid over the summer. So we're charged for the full amount. So it's kind of like a proration thing going on. So that's why it looks different.
In order for them to get benefits, they have to be paid 12 months of the year in the North. And so what they've done is they take that salary they have, they get paid 80% of the salary. So previously, when it was less, they were getting paid tremendously less. They were getting paid $20 an hour, which was making it really, really challenging. So what they did is now when they prorated it, they're actually getting the same amount as what a school district employee would be getting for a QP job. They're getting paid the same amount. The math works out to be the same amount, and then they get paid. It's almost like a forced savings piece in that. So they want to make sure they have benefits.
So I think for this, because both lines say actual hourly rate of pay isn't their actual hourly rate of pay.
Because it's under. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we can look at that for the next year.
This in
Presented,
the
yeah.
South, it is the actual number. Well, not actually, it's not 100% because we aren't able to get the information, but
Yes.
in the North,
Yeah.
it's the prorated amount.
Celeste, you had a second part to your question?
I think I just want to digest what we just heard. If anybody else wants to go ahead.
Any other questions? Doesn't look like there are any.
Question.
Oh, go ahead.
So the difference between the Squamish Nation administration being 5,000 and the North being 33 is because I feel like we've answered this question before, but why is there such a big difference?
It's determined by the nation what they want to charge for administration fee. So that's what they each set out as part of their administration fee for their contracts.
In the north, when the Quaqua managed it, it was 10,000. So it was all what the community who's overseeing those contracts wants.
And they're usually paid on a monthly basis, like it's their costs of their payroll, their HR, and to administer the, to pay out the staff. It's a good question.
I thought I saw Joyce up there, no?
No,
I was trying to look, I looked in the
Oh, okay. No worries. And then the Indigenous Education Council budget.
Sorry, may I just jump in for one quick second? I think I just want to recognize, I know we spoke about this earlier in the school year and at subsequent meetings, but again, just for the sake of the public and just for the record, this is actually a historic moment because as per Bill 40, this is true truth and conciliation where the budget is being presented to the board and not seeking approval. In the past, that's recognized that our district always worked very closely with the nations and did follow suit for what the nations determined they would like. However, this is that time. This is the first time, and then moving forward where the presentation is given for information and opportunity for questions. But I just want to recognize this moment and thank our staff. Our secretariat, which is shared between Colleen Hanna, Director of Instruction for Indigenous Education, and Sarah Hamelin, who is the administrative assistant for Colleen, as well as for Phil, just to thank them for their work in sitting on the council in those roles to support the council through this historic first budget. Before we moved on to IEC, I wanted to just mention that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris.
So I said, it's the first time we're doing it this way, which is amazing.
It is.
So it's really great. I said, it was just some, some conversation because it is very different and they chose in their terms of reference to do everything by consensus. So it was really hard and they're like, we'd like a motion. And they're like, oh, we're doing this by consensus. So how do we do this? So it was really, really interesting that's how they chose to do it. So we just had to sit and wait and see how it all worked through and we chose it not to vote on their own budgets either, that they each was presented and they actually chose to not vote or have any discussion about their own budgets, not they were asked. They said, yeah, your budget looks great. And we're not here to say that your budget isn't your budget. And thank you very much. And so it was really a really neat process to go through. So I appreciate that. Okay, as explained in sort of Bill 40 and as sort of promised I guess I shouldn't use the word promised, as presented by the ministry, that each of the Indigenous Education Councils was provided some funding to run the meetings, to provide training and basically pay for staff, etc. So at the last Indigenous Education Council meeting on June the 4th, we sort of finalized this budget. We had done most of it on May 15th, the prior meeting. And so this was a really interesting a piece that they had come up with. They felt that the Secretariat, which is not me, this will be for Sarah, part of Sarah's wage will be paid from the funds that are provided. And we did put it under honorarium, but that was the only place we really had because we felt that honorarium would be paid for. It's just indicating that we're paying certain things. They also wanted to have information evenings. So they would like to have 2 dinners, 2 separate gatherings one in the north. They'll do 2 in the north and 2 in the south. And part of that will be to sit with families. They'd like to invite families and community members and get information from them on the direction that they feel that the IEC should be going, or some initiatives that they should be looking at. So I thought that was really creative of them to come up with that piece. And on May 15th, we actually had half the amount, so we actually made the amendment that change on June 4th before we before it was finalized. They would like to set their own sort of strategic direction and have some a vision and knowing where they're going to be going, and some idea of how they're going to plan out the year. And with that is to have a retreat, which would include their hotel, obviously their honorariums, mileage, a room for the meeting, possibly having a facilitator. And this would be in August, so before the school year starts. I recognize that July was just far too quick to have everyone come together. And then there's honorarium for elders, parents, students, ISWs, and IEC members. So as part of the terms of reference, there are voting members and there are non-voting members. So the voting members are recognized by each of the nations, and each of the nations came forward with someone who is on council, as well as a staff member, and they were identified by title and what their portfolios were. So should there be an election, which happens depending on which community, it can be every 2 years, it can be every 4 years, that portfolio will remain on the IEC, so it's not identified by a person. So if it was a certain person and they didn't get elected back, that's okay. Their position or their portfolio is the part that's part of the IEC, so they would automatically be part of that of the IEC. They also are supposed to have a backup, so they each have their own backup person. So if they can't make the day, that they have someone who's backing up.
So all of your IEC members are chief of council?
One is chief and council, the other is staff. So that's what I was just gonna say, is that then the other one is staff that has an education portfolio. So that title with the education portfolio. In Nkwakwa, it's the everything hat, including education. So I think the only staff member is Julie.
Yeah.
So she was the staff member, and I believe that her backup is Chantal. So Chantal's also part of the council as well. So she's like the universal backup for both.
She's not on council any longer.
Oh, okay. So whatever her position was, that's the backup. So that's the piece that we have there. So each nation has that. The only other voting member that's on the IEC is, as instructed by the group, was to put out a call for, is there any self-identified Indigenous folks in the school district that would like to sit on council? And that was a parent in the school district who is also Métis. So they have a voting seat on the council. The other positions, these are all non-voting folks on the council that the members would like to be at all of the meetings. So that includes a student, apparently like one from each community. We're still working on how are we going to get them in. We're going to assume that everyone's going to be joining by Zoom to make it easier, but should they want to join in person, we do have some funds for that. And then they all should all get an honorarium for attendance at the meeting, because they would love to have the voice of the parents, the staff on the ground, as well as the community at the council. So that's that'll be coming to the September. And then education workshops. This was this was something that they were thinking of, that there's training sessions, but why shouldn't everyone just go to FNASC or some other Indigenous conferences, so they can increase their understanding of K-12 education and be able to make some good decisions there. So they included that. And then the last one was really rather unique, that they felt that not only as the Indigenous Education Council do they need to be trained, but why would they not bring in some folks for teachers, parents, students, etc., around maybe navigating the education system, or I'm trying to think of some of the suggestions that they came up with. Bringing someone in around culture or language, or how can we have some workshops so that we're expanding that knowledge, within our own communities. And again, that was North and South that they were thinking it'd be really great to maybe bring in someone like Joe Prona or bringing in Ian Campbell and speaking about the territory and where everyone is and some of the cultural practices and such, or have a dance group or have a performance, or they really thought it'd be a great opportunity to bring everyone together. And again, to be able to chat with folks, what do you think we should be doing? So that was a really unique, I thought it was really unique. I hadn't heard any other districts are doing that. So it was a really great suggestion. So I think we're still a little bit shy, aren't we? About $30,000 shy of the full budget. We're trying to spend it, but it's an awful lot of money.
So is that funded annually?
We did. So the first year we received 77,000 and change. And we, by the time we got everything up and running, I think we've only spent maybe $2,000 of the 77,000. So we lumped that together with next year, we have 97,000. So they added 20,000, even though
87.
87, sorry, I was thinking of 90. Most people haven't spent any of it. So we're trying to figure out how to spend it. So that's what they were. Yeah, so they added on. So right now we have funding for the next few years, but who knows after that? We don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
You carrying it on? Well, we are. This is a carryover. So this is an accumulation of both this year's and next year's.
How much can you keep carrying?
Right now, we can't.
Right
We haven't been told otherwise at this time. This is new.
The targeted funding we can.
Yeah, this is brand new funding. This is brand new targeted funding for the IEC. The targeted funding, when we do have carryover, we have to make an application by end of July to say, hey, we have this is why we have a surplus and this is what we're planning on doing with it. And just about that one. Yeah, so this one for sure. I'm almost 100% positive that every single school district has a carryover of the dollars.
I think there might be one that doesn't, that's it.
Yeah.
So, we do have our auditors waiting for us.
Yeah.
So was there anything in addition? I guess I just want to jump in and say and commend you as well. We figured, and Chris and I reported out on this 4 times at AGM. How we thought, oh, this is going to be a breeze for us to follow Bill 40 because we for years have had our Indigenous Education Council, our Indigenous Education Committee, but lo and behold, it wasn't as easy as we thought it was. And you facilitated all of this because we were removed from that responsibility. And thank you for the hard work. And I know trying to align schedules amongst all of it, and especially if you involve some of chief or council, they're responsible for absolutely everything. So trying to get some, everyone to be able to meet, just to meet in itself is challenging. Never mind actually do the work. So I thank you, and I 100% recognize it is not an easy task. So
it was slow, but I think it had to be done in that way. It was definitely interesting because I think it just shows the growth as well as that. I think after our first meeting, they're like, oh, we get to do this. This isn't we're not being told how to do it. We get to build it. And we're like, yes. And so that was a realization for them that it was something they could make very unique unto themselves. And so the terms of reference were handed in and it's at the ministry and waiting for the feedback on this. So so thank you.
well, that's fantastic. So thank you for taking the time to come in and present to us.
Problem.
We'll call him.
We can move on to our next item, which is the 2024-2025 financial statement audit plan. I see Grant Thornton. That is Grant there.
Donna.
Donna and Trevor. Okay.
Hi.
Take it away.
Okay. I don't see Trevor, but maybe he's on my next, he must
Yeah,
be
he's
here
there.
somewhere. He's on my next screen.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll start and then Trevor can add. This is our annual opportunity to, in advance of doing the year-end audit of the school district, to talk about kind of what our planned approach is to the audit and get the finance committee and trustee insights on things that might be top of mind for you in terms of what you might like us to incorporate into our audit. And so, and tell you what's new and exciting in terms of accounting and auditing that you should be aware of. So I can start, and then maybe Trevor can add a bit more details, because we are kind of early in the process where we're just we've met with management to get an idea of new developments in the school district in the past year. We've gotten some preliminary financial information, I think, on your third quarter results, and gotten things like board minutes and are going through that process of doing the planning. And from our perspective, there isn't anything that's come out of that process that's really would impact the audit for the 2025 fiscal year. From an accounting perspective, there aren't any new revolutionary accounting developments that have to be taken into account. There are some intended revisions to public sector accounting standards, but they don't come into effect for another couple of years. So there's nothing that would impact the current year audit. From an audit standards perspective, there aren't any new audit standards that come into effect for the 2025 fiscal year. If you may remember, a couple of years ago, there were new standards that came into play that basically said, as auditors, we should consider how IT and IT-related risks impact the financial statements. So we continue to look at that as part of our audit, but nothing new from a standards perspective. I would say the only thing that's slightly new is a new tool that we're using as part of the audit process. And that tool is called MindBridge. And what that tool does is it takes all of the data that's in the school district's general ledger, and it provides an analysis of that data for us to be able to kind of highlight maybe riskier transactions that have been recorded in the year and make sure that we're looking at those transactions. And so that's something that we will be doing as part of this year's audit. And it really helps us. One of the areas that we look at from a risk perspective is journal entry testing, because that's an area where if you wanted to hide something, you might do a journal entry to sort of circumvent controls. And so MindBridge really helps us in doing that risk assessment with respect to journal entry testing in particular. The other kind of items that we've talked to management about, just in terms of what's new outside of the school district and what we're talking to many of our clients about, is the impact of what's happening in the US and tariffs on entities and whether that might be impacting either the financial statements or the financial statement audit. And I think although there are some purchases that the school district might make from the US, I don't think there's anything significant there would be a significant impact in the 2025 fiscal year with respect to tariffs or how tariffs might affect the school district. The other thing that we spoke about is something we call asset retirement obligations. So there was a new standard a few years ago that basically says when you have a building that you know might need remediation, you are required to estimate the costs of that remediation and record that as a liability in the financial statements. And so the school district has done that for a couple of years. And the school district has done that based upon information provided by the ministry. But every year we do have to look at those cost estimates to see if they're reasonable. And the ministry costs are a couple of years old. And so one of the things that we'll look at as part of the audit is just the reasonability of whether those costs should be increased. And so we'll factor that into our audit. Those are the big picture highlights of the kind of what's new and exciting. Not that there's that much new and exciting this year, but maybe I'll pass it to Trevor just to talk about maybe the specifics in terms of how we're going to do the audit and audit timing.
Yeah, thanks, Donna. I think you covered the main key kind of areas of our plan, but just as Donna mentioned previously, is that we are going through the planning and our risk assessment phase with preliminary information from management, and aim to wrap that up by about the first or second week of July. We've agreed with management and have our year-end procedures to start August 11th and run for a few weeks, and no changes really to the previous years, and that we would do a hybrid approach. So have some time to work on through all the information remotely, and also come out and spend a few days out on site, which has worked well in the past, and it's something I think we can continue to work towards to get everything done and wrapped up, and then noting that we'll be presenting our audit results and running through that on September 10th, I believe is the date. So I think just in terms of that's kind of a high level overview, and our main areas of focus where we spend the most time in our audit haven't changed either. Of course, looking at employee compensation as a significant expense for the school district. So doing a mixture of analytics and detailed testing there. We do engage the work of a third-party specialist actuary in terms of looking at the employee future benefits. So that's just something to note as well. And then we do take a look at the capital activity, which I don't think there's too many significant items, but there's always some projects that are ongoing. So we take a look at those additions and make sure that they're appropriately accounted for. And then, of course, looking at the revenues and confirming the funds received, and looking at the deferred funding and the deferred capital funding to make sure that that's all captured appropriately. So those are kind of our main areas of focus, and just on the timing there. I think, Donna, if you have anything else to add, or
I think the only other thing to note, which isn't new, but is maybe just worth highlighting, is so we are what's known as a component auditor, because the Auditor General does the audit of the province of BC, and the Auditor General relies on our audit to be consolidated into the provincial accounts. And so we do need to communicate with the Auditor General. And so we will continue to do that as we have in the past, in terms of providing the information that they require from us, and that typically would include copies of any communications that we've issued to the school district. So copies of the final audited financial statements and any reporting that we do to the school district. We've covered, tried to do a big overview, but happy to just chat with the committee in terms of any, we always like to ask any particular kind of risk areas that, or anything that you'd like to see covered as part of the audit plan.
Don't think there are any questions. Did you want to add anything, Daniel?
No, I can't remember if Donna said, but this is our second year of our 5-year contract with. So this is our second term working with them.
Yeah, so from an audit fee, maybe I should just cover from an audit fee perspective. Our fees will be consistent with what's been included in that the request for proposal process.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and presenting. And I think that it for their
Yeah, I think so. We'll
portion.
be hearing from them again in September.
Well, have a great summer, and we will we'll see you again in September.
All right, thank you.
See you in August.
Thanks so
Bye-bye.
much. Sorry, we were
Yeah.
running a few minutes behind.
That's all right. Thanks,
No
everyone.
problem. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so next up we have the 3-year financial plan. And Danielle and Ellen.
So Elena's gonna present, actually what Elena's done, she's done the report and she's also put together a slideshow just to go over the highlights of the report. She's not gonna go through page by page. But I did want to mention that this report is a yearly requirement from the government. And it does not need board approval. But it needs to be, discussed at the board level. That's what the ministry is looking for. And yeah, I think that's it. Are you okay over there?
I'm good. I'm sharing screen with your plan. This is our third multi-year plan.
And the plan itself is enrichment, the agenda. This is just highlights, and we will overview the main parts of this report. And the report mentions actual budget and estimates projections. And so that we are clear in this report and highlights, I will be talking only about estimates and projections, which cover 2 years, 2026-27 and 2027-28. Budget will be discussed later today. So the report, multi-year plan is required by the Ministry of Education, and it's part of a framework for enhancing student learning. And it requires boards to develop and implement multi-year plans which support operating financial plans that are focused on improving students' outcomes. This is where financial plan sits. It comes from strategic plan into operational plans, and operational plans develop into budget. So operational plans besides financial plan include human resources plans, communication plans, information technology plans, and financial plan part of this system. Timeline for the multi-year plan is usually June when we present next year budget. And it's addition like 2 more years to the next year budget. So in May, June, we have the first and second reading of next year budget. And right now we are presenting multi-year plan. So the main focus of multi-year financial plan is kind of link between our strategic plans and financial and budget priorities. So the 4 main focuses that you can find in multi-year plan are those for like student learning and equity, truth, reconciliation, and mental health and well-being. It's 2 pages in the report covering those 4 focuses in great details. And financial plan and next year budget and financial plan support those priorities. To have 2 more years in addition to next year plan in current economic circumstances is quite challenging. And any budget and any estimate requires assumptions to be made. On page 9 of the multi-year plan, we have the list of assumptions that we made in order to produce the budget and financial plan. So the major assumptions include enrollment and revenues, staffing, salaries, benefits, and services and supplies. So we assume that per student funding will increase in 26-27 and 27-28 years by 2%. Even so, 25-26 grants increased just 1.1% compared to 24-25, but average increase year over year for the last 10 years was 2%. So we assume that it will be slightly higher next year, especially the bargaining is right now in effect, so that it should support salary increases. So our enrollment projections for projected years align with demography reports and district projections for September. Staffing salaries and benefits. So our staffing levels like FTE for teachers, principals, educational assistants, support staff, and exempt staff, they're based on projected enrollments of students. And salary increase of 2% are factored into our estimates for unionized staff and principals and vice principals. This is different. This assumption is different from prior year multi-year plan because we had increase throughout all staffing categories for this 3-year plan. We are not including exempt staff because we have to meet our 1% minimum required contingency. So the increase for exempt staff would happen only if there is a funding or requirement from the board or funding from the ministry for this category of employees. And benefits rates increased significantly in 24-25 comparing to 23-24. But for 25-26 and next 2 years, we assumes that it will stay this way because it stays kind of for a while the same, and then there are jumps when there are upgrades from service providers, from carriers. So 32% is currently percentage level of benefits of salaries. For services and supplies, we assume 2% in inflation rate. This is what on average different scenarios from Bank of Canada, but it's gravitating around 2% for upcoming years. But again, to meet our 1% minimum requirement, we couldn't increase throughout all years. And we kept 2% increase only for those categories of payments that we have no control over, like utilities and insurance, because if we pay utility taxes and insurance, we just have to pay what we have to pay. And for the rest of service and supplies for 26-27 year, we kept the same level like 25-26, meaning no increase for inflation. And for 27-28, we even decreased 0.2 comparing to 26-27 year, which means those two estimate years, unless there are changes in enrollment and funding, we would have to make some to find some efficiencies and to find ways to provide the same services with effectively small amounts.
Can I ask you something? So I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. So 32% of salaries for benefits. Is that, and it could be way off base here. So say somebody is hired for $100,000. That person costs us $132,000? Yeah. Yes.
That's correct. So the percentage is different depending on the staff group. Like for 1 month employees in support staff, it's different percentage. And for exempt staff, it's smaller. For principals, it's also different. But on average, at the district level, it's 32%. It includes 3 types of benefits. One is statutory benefits like CPP and AI that is required by the government. Another one is non-statutory benefits, such as extended health insurance
Pension.
and pension plans. And the third category is agreement based, like contract based, if provided 8 days of work and professional development allowances for certain duties. This is 3 categories of benefits. This is average for all type of benefits for all groups of employees.
Right. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was computing that correctly.
Yeah, for every $100, it's like 132 total, like fully loaded salary on average. So again, like I said, the service and supplies that highlighted yellow assumption is not something that we did in previous multi-year plan. This year was more difficult to balance our estimated years. And if more students are enrolled or more funding is provided, then we will have more flexibility.
Sir, can we just go back to that? I just want to go over that piece there. Can you go back to that? So basically, for expenses that we know are going to go up, utilities are going to go up, like those, insurance, we increased. But for things that we sort of have more control over, for services and supplies, do we left them at the same level? Because we just can't afford to increase that, even though we know the price of things is going up. So that means we have to do more with less. Yeah.
But that's based on an assumption again, that we're not going to be fully funded for, we didn't want to, we want to be as conservative as possible again, as we do when we do our own projections. So we don't know what the outcome of bargaining will be. And based on the outcome of that bargaining, we don't know what the ministry will, they will cover, right? Again, that they're going to cover unionized staff, and they usually cover principals and vice principals. Beyond that, we don't know. Previous agreement, they provided money to cover exempt staff. We are being super conservative by assuming they're not covering staff above and beyond principals and vice principals. If they do, then that's going to have a positive impact on our bottom line. But we want to be, again, as conservative as possible, knowing that we're not held by this budget, but we don't want any surprises. Is what we're trying to share. We've just been really transparent with you and with the public, which has been our way.
Yeah, thank you. And just for clarification, multi-year plan is not intended to be 3-year budget.
Right.
So we have, as before, 1 year budget for next year. And the multi-year plan is just a forecast estimate for us to facilitate province-wide consolidation of all district budgets, because the province has 3-year plan and districts previously didn't have 3-year plans. Now it's kind of aligned, and also for bigger high transparency and accountability, and to show that we are sustainable and we are planning ahead how we are going to make it. So next slide shows our funded enrollment for funded enrollment and international education enrollment. About funded enrollment, there have been a lot of numbers going around, and just to clarify, to not be confused, this slide shows only school age resident students, the left one, count in September. Even so, the budget by law, for instance, on the very top, you can see the total amount, the total enrollment is high because it includes February and May student counts as required by law instruction. So we have to include throughout the year FTE, student FTE. For these purposes, for this report purposes, we want to compare September only, because Bargar, for instance, gives us only September. They don't give us February and May count. So to be consistent, showing only September, it's easy to compare. For instance, actual for 23-24 of 5,292 student FTE, that is September count. And budget 24-25 and 25-26 are September only, 5,151. And for next year, 5,245. For For 26-27, we had 5,250 students estimate, based on Bargar and some district adjustments. And for 27-28, 5,157. So Bargar does show gradual decline of funded enrollment. So this is the result. International education enrollment is limited by classroom spaces and homestay availability, but projections are 145 FTE deemed to be reasonable by the district. 25-26 year or so increase, 1,000 increase in tuition fee. But because of enrollment went from 140 to 138 for next year, so the revenue 2.1 million stays the same. So this is how this enrollment correspond to provincial grants and international tuition fee. 65.1 million for next year budget and 67.3 million for estimate 26-27, 67.1 million for estimate 27-28. And international tuition fee, 2.2 million, 2.5 million, 2.5 million for 3 years. So this is staffing levels that we are projecting. They are broken into 5 categories for teachers, principals, educational assistants, the rest of support staff, and other professionals, which include trustees and exam staff, like superintendent, secretary, treasurer. Basically, teachers for next year is 371.102 FTE, and educational assistant 99.578. And support staff 121.899 FTE. Other professionals stay the same, like one down for next year because of international program. And principals, vice principals stay the same. There's a slight difference from 24-25 budget. It's due to change in estimated substitute. This FTE includes substitute. If teachers require substitute, the teachers FTE includes those substitutes.
And I'll just interject to just share, maybe you're going to go there, but just recall the color coordination. So the dark blue and then the light blue, right, being projection and estimate, and it's directly tied to our conservative enrollment projections for students. So I don't want the public or anybody thinking, oh my goodness, it looks like a net decrease of 10.0 teachers. That is simply because of, see, from 374 to 364 at the end. That's simply because of our tied to students with the average of so many kids per classroom. So it's not meant to be a crystal ball to say we're looking to decrease. So just to be clear, to make all of this equal, or you can't balance it. It's I really appreciate that work, because that was a lot of work to separate actual projection and estimate, and it's tied to our always conservative enrollment projections. And as you know, we wait until sometimes August to realize, yeah, we do have to open up another division, and therefore have more kids in the classroom and hire another teacher. So just for clarity, because I can see maybe some members of the public or trustees thinking, oh, are we looking at some reductions? And that's not what this is meant to represent. I was waiting for a gasp, but I thought I'll get ahead of that. Thank you.
It's all dependent on the number of children, which is written into the collective agreements anyway. So it's not up to us to decide how many teachers are hired. It's just based on how many students we have.
Correct. And then there will be those cases where, because it's total FTE, you could have full-time teachers who, for medical reasons, need to go on a leave, or for other reasons, ask for a reduction, in which case we're hiring more people. So again, the total FTE includes all those different scenarios: people with term contracts, people with 1.0, people who are at 0.8, et cetera, et cetera. So it's the total FTE, not necessarily the number of bodies around.
Okay, this is a slide for salaries and benefits. Like I said, other professionals line highlighted here shows the same amount throughout 3 years. The rest are increased and depending on enrollment and salary increase. Like Chris mentioned, FTE of teachers and educational assistants heavily depend on class sizes and classroom enhancement plans like ratio median. So this assumption is not on the list of assumptions, but it's kind of it's clear that we assume that we are meeting. There's no changes to restored language. We are meeting all the ratios and the classroom sizes, and that's why the teachers' FTE are the way they are. Services and supplies, again, highlighted is those that are seeing 2% increase as per Bank of Canada inflation projections. The rest are for estimate 26-27, the stays the same like next year budget, and estimate for 27-28 is 2% decrease, except those two categories, insurance and utilities. So with all those adjustments for estimate years and all those efficiencies that we are planning to find, the budget is balanced and unrestricted reserves are within 1%, 1.17% for next year budget, and slightly over 1% for 2 estimate years. That's all. Any questions?
Oh, just saying awesome, thank you. I hope let us know that the report for your approval and reading. We hope that the presentation of a slide deck makes it a little more clear for the highlights. So let us know and teach if that's.
Oh, much
We should,
easier.
yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
And I'm a numbers person.
Any questions or comments? In addition? I think you're good. Thank you.
Oh, you're just, thanks so much for that. I always think it's a really good document. And it is nice to have it sort of spelled out rather than just seeing big spreadsheets worth of numbers. And so that's really great. So thank you for taking the time to do that. And I just have one question, and I think you might have answered it and I might have missed it, but are the benefits, and kind of goes back to what Rebecca talked about before, the 32% for benefits. If you're a full-time FTE, is the percentage of the benefits that you receive different than the percentage of what a part-time person would receive? Or like if you're full-time and your benefits are worth X number of dollars, is a part-time person's benefits the same number of dollars or different? Every
staffing category and every contract within the category may have different percentages. So you may qualify for different, like obviously statutory benefits are all the same because it's required no matter what kind of contract and what kind of employee you are. Agreement based and non-statutory depends on policies and collective agreements. With 32, it's just very, very average. It's like average temperature in the hospital, you know, like here, at least 6 or 8 different rates.
I think
Blended
more
into
for
this.
the non, like our cost for the non-full-time people is actually more expensive because we still provide them like the same benefit. But for us to pay for the cost, we have to pay for it regardless. So it actually is more expensive because some of them might not be working over the summer. So we still have to pay for the benefits for the whole year.
Also, next year, previous year, the pension plan implemented changes and implemented second tier of rate. So if you earn more than certain amount, it used to be 5.95% flat after a 3,500 exemption. But if you earn more than I don't remember the amount, something like around 80,000. So there is additional percentage, so you pay more. So it was implemented January 1st, 2024. So it kind of made it even more complicated. Within the same category, like bus drivers or like, no, maybe not bus drivers, teachers, you might be paying this or may not be paying this. Depends.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, looks like you're good on that, so thank you again. And now we can move on to the long-range facilities plan. You're looking a little bit beat up there, Ian. Yeah, right? The exercise thing's overrated, isn't it?
I know. I think there's a lot of coverage time in the future. Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have a copy of our long range facility plan to share with the board today. I understand that we're going to have a special meeting
Next week.
next Wednesday,
Mhm.
and we'll have the plan then. The delay mainly was due to the completion of our local knowledge study that was ongoing this year. So they have to align that information needs to go into long facility plan, and as usual with these types of projects, they go right down to the wire, and often our consultants are considering our submission date as deadline date, which is June 30. So they're all shooting for June 30, not realizing that we have to bring this information. Well, it's not that they're not realizing, it's just that it may not have been a high enough priority to be able to push everyone to get it to here for review before June 30. So I apologize for that not being available today, but it will be available next week.
Okay.
And further to that, it's a fairly minor update. The last time it was updated was 2022. So it's not significant changes. It's similar to our existing plan. It is just a refresh. And it's also going to contain current enrollment data as well as the results of our local knowledge study.
You track you in for that? I know I said another one. And on the next agenda, that's true. Okay, well, thank you so much, and we'll definitely be ready for next Wednesday. So then that goes to our, we don't have any discussion items. So that brings us to action items and 5-year capital plan.
And that is me again.
That is you, yes.
Yeah, so in this is the 5-year capital plan that is speaking to major capital. So a major capital submission. We have 3 submission timelines to meet every year with the Ministry of Education for our 5-year capital plan. Today's is the major portion, and we are bringing forward again. It's been a solid 10 years now, this Southwick upgrade project at Howe Sound Secondary. So we're bringing forward again for review by the ministry with very few changes from last year. It will be updated, or it already has updated enrollment information. And then the projected costs are very high on this project. It is science wings and shops, which are expensive construction, and even the seismic upgrading on the existing wings is way up there. This is based on last year's submission. So when we enter, or I enter the information into my caps, it comes up with a dollar value for the project. So even though we have estimates from consultants in the project request fact sheet, they are superseded often, or always, typically say in the last 5 years, by the ministry's system that's quantifying the type of construction and the square footage and things like that. So it comes up with a number, and that's what those numbers are based on. So every year it's a bit of a unknown when we come here, and sometimes in the past I've had to be determined because we didn't know what the construction cost would be. So I'm anticipating these to be higher. And then maybe not dramatically, But given, economic climate, by the time, if the project's approved. With steel being a large component, especially if even with the seismic upgrading of the existing wings and not replacing, there's a lot of steel involved in that. So with the tariff situation, I'm hoping it's resolved in 5 years or so, but. There's potentially 50% additional costs on imported steel. So it will affect the project cost estimate, and it will also affect how the ministry is going to approve projects. So to get back to what we're submitting and what we're asking of the ministry is 2 options again in our project request fact sheet. Option 1 is to renovate the existing wings to seismically upgrade them, brace them so that they won't collapse. And part of our thing isn't just collapse here in Cosano, it's liquefaction. So it's a very complex seismic upgrade that has to try and prevent the wings from sinking into the mud. So it's not just bracing for shaking, it's also for sinking down. So very complex type of seismic upgrade, and it's considered H1 as it has been since 2015. So it's a high risk seismic potential for damage on those.
Since when, sorry? 20?
20 last, the PDR was 2014, and I think there's been some other seismic assessments throughout the years. I believe the earliest one is 2012. But it identifies that it is high risk in the B wing and shops at House on Secondary for a high risk seismic event, high risk for potential damage in a seismic event. So with the 2 options, the option 1, like you say, is renovating the existing wings. But it's not our desired option necessarily. It does give us the ability to do some functional improvements in the B wing, renovate those dysfunctional classrooms that are what I call landlocked between the hallway and the other classrooms that are against the exterior wall. So we would have some funds to correct and redesign that space that would help us functionally and possibly gain us some space with classrooms and education space. But we're also asking the ministry to put a lot of money into the oldest parts of Housetown Secondary. It's also the sections of the school that has the worst facility condition index. There's different parts of the school, so it is also the one that, being the oldest, it also would be in the greatest need of repair. Lots of things, even structurally are past the best before date. But the building is still considered safe up to a seismic event. So, and then the second option is a full replacement of those wings. And just to back up for a second, if we were to do the seismic upgrading of those wings as they exist, we have to displace the students that are there. So there's a big hit to the district in Portland and finding a way to accommodate those kids that are in those currently in those classrooms. Especially science, the science portables are hugely expensive.
The new rules about how high they have to be.
Absolutely, yeah.
To build that.
Exactly. So all of those temporary accommodations for the students would have to meet flood construction requirements set by the municipality, and it would be prohibitively expensive to have to accommodate those students. So our preferred option to the ministry will be option 2, which is the replacement of those old wings. And it makes economic sense. I know there's a $10 million difference between the 2 projects, but in the long run, you're ending up with brand new spaces. And it allows us the opportunity to incorporate the alternate head program into the construction, even though we're not asking specifically for expansion for growth. It also gives us the ability to have spaces designed that can be designed in such a way that it would help us with future growth pressures. So the second option where we replace the wings is the desired option. Also, the students currently in the B wing don't need to be displaced in option 2. Option 2 Well, it's constructing the new replacement wings in a different location.
And then you would destroy the wing afterwards.
Yeah, and that would become additional parking. Yeah,
Okay.
it's in the project request fact sheet. It shows a graphic, a really good graphic that explains what we're talking about. So option two, even though we call it option two, is really our first option, and that would be how we put it to the ministry.
Curiosity, where would the new wing be?
It's
Parking lot?
well, yeah, it's adjacent to the gyms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's an addition,
Yeah,
right?
it has to be.
Non-conforming, so whatever that's called, it means we don't need the flood
It's existing.
mitigation. Yeah, that's what we're supposed to think.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Again, it
it's a win-win and it makes a lot of
Yeah,
economic
makes way
sense.
more
Sense.
Yeah.
Figuratively and literally,
Yeah.
sense with a C and with an S.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah, so that's how it will be presented to the ministry when we have that into the, subject to approval, how we tap it to the ministry in White House. It will be preferred is actually talking to. The second project on here is a new program we found out about this year is a demolition support for school districts who have derelict buildings on properties. Usually we're talking about old schools, surplus schools, down in Vancouver where there's schools that are very, very old that need to be demolished due to safety and other issues. So we plan to take advantage of this to have the two old teacher gyms demolished at Taylor Road. So that's in Pemberton near the quite close to the old Pemberton second and also the current bus route. So we will incorporate that into the project request for this year. I don't have a dollar amount, and we don't actually have a project request fact sheet completed. We found out about this program near the end of building our PRFSs for this submission. They have told us to put it in anyway and get it in there. And then we can fill up the data after the fact. We can go and have the hazardous materials assessments done again. They've been done, but it would want a current one. And it's remediating the site, basically getting it so that it would be in a marketable state, and also removing derelict buildings which have potential for all kinds of yeah.
So the buildings are empty now.
They are empty, like it happened for many years. Yeah.
They're boarded up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's
To me, it seems odd that it would be in capital.
I know, I mean, major, so
Yeah.
that's.
Because we're looking at the teacherage at Blackwater Creek, $10,000.
I know, under it.
Well, it's not gonna be it's not gonna be that, but.
No, not at the end of the day.
Mhm.
But yeah, I agree with, how that seems strange that it would be in major capital. Usually that's a big expenditure. And I think the reason is that we're typically talking about very large buildings. So, you could get into the millions of dollars.
Old schools or.
Yeah, exactly. And then, one other thing to note here is last year we had included, the new daycare building at Squamish Elementary, to replace the well past the best before date portable. That project is still in the works, even though we were prepared to resubmit, update the PRFS, and the childcare division of the capital management branch said, nope, it's still in the works, it's still idling along. They hadn't made any decisions on those projects. So we may find out that is a supported project at some point here.
Maybe over the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, they said we might soon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was great. So that's, even though it was submitted under the 2024 capital plan submission, it is automatically rolled forward. So it's saves us a bit of work, and it's also good to know that it wasn't a non-supported project at this time.
April?
Yeah, it's just curiosity more than anything. If we get to the place where we're demolishing those buildings, the teacher just, I'm assuming we still own the land.
Yes.
So is there any thoughts on that, or is it just because I would think that land would have value too?
Yes.
I don't know that we should.
That's a later.
Probably too much in
Later items like curiosity.
It's in our
Well,
agenda.
it's good. I think it's because it's involving land, it's in camera.
Yeah.
We're in a public meeting, so, thank you. Anything else? Good job. Thank you, Ian. It looks like. Pardon? You saying something?
I said thanks, Ian.
No.
That's all.
We have a recommendation.
Major.
It's under item 7, action items.
That the finance committee recommends that the Board of Education approve the 2026-2027 major capital plan as presented.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Cynthia, for a second. Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, then have at it, Ian.
Awesome, thank you.
See you in a bit.
You betcha.
Please, so, thank you. We'll see you soon.
Yes.
So next up, we have the 2025-2026 annual budget and bylaw. And that is Danielle and Elena.
So I have, Alana's gonna go over the updated budget for next year. And this evening, we're gonna be doing the second and third reading of the 25-26 budget. And Alana's just gonna go over any changes that were made from the last reading, so it's fairly minimal. We'll let her go over that.
Thank you, Danielle. Are we starting? I will share the screen. Wendy,
I think she said to go ahead.
I don't know what, that's it. I'll leave it to the vice chair to determine. You do have 1, 2, 3, 4. You do have 4.
We're okay. I'll just remove it.
you wait.
Yeah, feel free to go ahead.
I'll go ahead. Okay. The first reading was May 14 of 25-26 annual budget. And since then, they did some changes. On the enrollment side, the only change was 4.5 non-graduated adults. It's 4.37 shown here and 0.13 here in 2 parts. Adding little 25,000 revenue to operating grants for the total of 65.6 million. No changes to school age resident students, no change to February and May counts. The total in the budget bylaw, total number of students enrollment is 5,348.438. There were no changes to other revenues or international enrollment. 2 changes made to special purpose funds. We previously didn't include these 2, but based on preliminary discussions, early learning programs and seamless day kindergarten, 175,000 and 55,400. Accordingly, was added to special purpose fund revenue with a total of 11.1 million. We also recalculated special purpose fund carry forward because previously this new literacy grant of 225,000 was not included in carry forward. Now we are including it because we didn't spend. We know that we will not spend till the end of the year. So restricted special purpose fund carry forward increased by 225,000. And the use of unrestricted surplus went down 93,000 from first reading. So it was 328,000. Now it's 230,000, the use of unrestricted surplus. The total revenues is without capital revenue, 83 million. So there were some changes made to allocations, but I will be showing them in details for the convenience. to show more details of allocation changes. Here we can see what changes were made in the following areas. In learning services, we increased comparing to first, this is the first reading, this is the second and third reading. So we increased the 0.3 FTE school psychology services and 1.19 FTE instructional support teachers, and also increased 85,000 of occupational and physical therapy services. So
Can I jump in just to explain? So when we learned that we were provided additional funding for early literacy interventions, part of that is, unfortunately, the opportunity to provide more school psychologists work with children to be able to identify potential reading and other challenges. So we are super fortunate. I know for years we've always not been able to fill all of our positions, but we've been very fortunate. We have the folks in order to provide the services. So super happy to continue with that and to be able to add 0.3 out of that funding to provide additional school psychologist services. So the 0.3 of that is being paid for out of the literacy grant that we were provided, which includes that early intervention and support piece for students.
thank you, Chris. Yeah.
So in summary, that means that children who require diagnoses are more likely to get those diagnoses early on, so that is that what you're saying? If psychological services are they doing diagnoses?
Yeah, depending on, again, what the need is. Sometimes for early primary students, they still won't have a full psych ed because the research shows that changes do occur over time. And it's often best to do that full-blown psych ed grade 7, grade 5 and up. However, that doesn't mean that there won't be, we have our screeners, or I don't hate the use of screener, but that's what we use in the parlance. So if there looks like there's some identified need for students, then a school psychologist who have expertise in some of those interventions can support school-based teams in providing those services, which will more likely down the line lead to a recommendation for a fuller psych ed later.
So early assessment,
Yes.
not necessarily diagnoses, but early assessment for more children to provide support earlier on potentially.
That's right.
What it's getting at. I just wanted
Thank
to
you.
make sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I forgot to mention that since first reading, benefits cost were estimated based on the most recent rate updates for next year that keep coming from providers. So the benefits lines went up on every single budget area. So it was all estimated for all staffing categories. So next change was a slight decrease in elementary counselors, and for professional development was overall 84,000 increase. This is professional learning grant. This is a new grant. The grant actually called literacy grant, but we included it in professional learning because it is for professional learning for teachers and also to support students. Yeah. Next area that we did changes since first reading was increase of 0.2 FTE increase in a teacher coordinator for educational support program initiatives, and also 7,000 increase in mentorship program for teachers. And then in Indigenous education, we increased the student success advisor by 0.1 and slightly increased the council committee training based on more accurate estimates of carry forward for next year. Just a little clarification about Indigenous. We were talking about targeted funds earlier today, and Danielle mentioned that we were having problems paying invoices to First Nation. So this amount of targeted funds, I just wanted to point it, includes 24-25 carry forward and next year funding. It does not include prior year not paid invoices. If they again not paid by the end of this year or within like week or first week of July, this amount may increase in amended budget because we have to keep including, because if we haven't paid, we have to show that we have it, this amount we have to pay it. So this 1.4 million includes 23-24 carry forward and 24-25 carry forward and 25-26 budget.
But again, it's restricted. And so.
It is restricted.
And we're not, some people can say the same thing about apologies, but we're not on the hook, quote unquote, for anything more. So if it goes to 1.8, it doesn't mean the district has to find $400,000 more dollars. It just means that, you know, there's $400,000 in outstanding invoices from this year.
Yes.
And it's all covered. So it's a, just to be clear, I think sometimes it's a.
Exactly.
When we talk about moving things forward and that we carry it, but it's accounted for and it's not deficit for the district. to
Not a
have to cover.
surprise.
Yes,
And also it's not, I mean, it isn't paid, but it's not invoiced.
yes.
It's not invoiced yet.
Yes, so it's not like we haven't paid it.
Right.
It's that we haven't received an invoice.
We didn't receive
That's correct.
invoice. The reason I'm pointing it out that the amount is not trivial. It's significant amount, and if you see the amended budget jump, so that would be the reason why.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Another change is international.
Just so everybody knows, like right now. Squamish Nation owes us in between 800,000 and $1 million. Or sorry, we owe them, sorry. We owe-
I'm like, oh, wait a minute.
we owe them like between 800 and $1 million, so.
Wow, really?
That's a lot, so.
But that's just due to the administrative.
They haven't,
Yes,
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 yes.
to be fixed. So that's a lot of money.
They're sitting.
We're
They
sitting.
generate-
We're sitting on.
We're sitting on, but yeah, they generate a lot. Okay, too. And then also with the restricted aspect, in case not everyone is aware. And I don't know if it's still the case, but years and years ago, we made it restricted. Like it's not restricted by,
It's restricted by the ministry.
It is.
it is now?
Yes.
Okay, because in the past it wasn't, like you could have used it anywhere, but we decided to restrict it for Indigenous education only.
You were ahead of both worlds.
Yes, we were.
We're ahead of time. The international education, so 1.0 FTE decrease in homestay coordinators, according to program review. And another change in FTE is in instructional leadership team. So overall 0.51 FTE increase. And the last budget area that saw changes since first reading is business services. So general HR operation we had to add 7,000 because we pay for well-being services, which used to be funded by now discontinued special purpose funds. So now it has to be increased through operating, and also post-employment benefits accrual. So the most recent actuarial study came in from Mercer, and this is the amount they suggested for next year as an estimate for post-employment benefits. So these are all changes since first reading. Overall budget by law. Do we want to bring it on the screen or? Well, this concludes my presentation of summary in details. If you have questions based on budget by law, which will attach to the agenda, you're welcome.
Any questions? Celeste?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for presenting it in the way that you did. It was really clear and helpful for us.
I was wondering.
Yeah, no, it was actually perfect. I was hoping you would do something like that. Yeah. So thank you so much. Anticipating the questions in the room.
Yeah, thank you so much. So what's up next? The recommendation? Anyone prepared?
That the Finance Committee recommend the Board of Education approve the 2025-2026 annual budget as presented.
Thank you, April. Second for that? Melissa, any objections? Okay, seeing none, then that is carried. Any questions of clarification from the public? Nope. Okay, then it looks like we've concluded the business of this agenda and we are now adjourned. So with that, are we